the coach with the one and only Travis, the Captain Carruthers, and myself, James, the coach McCracken. And today, team, we are going to unpack a conversation that Trav Carruthers had with none other than Oliver Grant, who is one of AFG's highest performing brokers. Certainly one of the highest performing in Queensland. I think recently, Trav, he took out the state award for the best performing broker in Queensland at the state AFG awards. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So this story, the conversation that we'll be talking about that I had with Oliver recently, I actually went to the awards with him. He wasn't drinking, and I decided to have a few beers. So he was happy enough to drive me up and drive me back. So it's my conversations that I had with him in his office before we went up there, and then on the trip up and the trip back, and some of the key takeaways that I got, and some of the key learnings that I got from my interactions with him.
Okay, great. So just repeat that. Well, what we're going to be unpacking is the conversations you had with Oliver when he picked you up and you drove to the awards for the day. Then, as you drove back, and what you were saying, what we were discussing, and essentially an opportunity to take our players under the hood, if you like, or behind the scenes as to what a high performing broking practice looks like, at least in the context of the conversation you had with Oliver. Let's start with this one. At what time did you first crack your first beer? Just to get that out there. Was that in the car, or did you have to wait until you got to the event?
That was good. I should have had someone in the car actually. No, I had my first beer within about 30 seconds of arriving there.
Okay,
AFG
good.
throw
That
up
was
pretty
just
good
a
at that.
test. That was
Yeah.
just a test. I'm glad you passed the test. Otherwise, our audience may have been a little dismayed. All right, so uh, let's just give a tiny bit of background here. How do you know Oliver? Is he part of your small cohort of peeps that you catch up with when you do your little strategic planning sessions, sort of once every 12 months?
Yes and no. He's sort of loosely around the fringes there, and this is
Yep.
this will lead into this when we're talking about him, right? Oliver Grant. A lot of people probably never heard of him. He's not at events. He's not big on social media. He's not say he's very he's not very publicly facing, right? So we see him a little bit here and there, but met him at Broker Academy a few years ago, and he lives here on the Gold Coast. So some of the strategic style events that we go to with AFG, some of them he goes to, some of them he doesn't, and
Yep.
he's someone that has probably one of the best performers at AFG. So he's somebody that I seek out quite a lot and take advice from, and now him and I have struck up a bit of a friendship, and I'll lean on him from time to time with different things.
Okay, great. And so when you get in the car, other than the usual chit chat, let's sort of dive into some of the specifics as to what you were quizzing him with. And as I said, I'll try and have a look at things from a different perspective to see what might be applicable or relatable for our audience and give them some context. So that rather than necessarily going and implying just a strategy or a tactic, is to try and understand the thinking or the principles that relate to that in order to then grasp it in a way that might be more useful or relevant for them. So over to you, mate. What was the nature of the conversation? How did it go? And what were some of the key discussion points?
Yeah, so cool. So I might frame this up where when I turned up at I've been to his office before, but I knew where it was. But
Yep.
even his office is very telling about the type of person he is and the way that he operates his business. It's in a row of panel warehouses. There's a mechanic and a timber yard, and it's very industrial where it is, right? And it's very, when you turn up to his office, it's very unassuming. Big roller door and just a glass single door, nothing special, right? You open up the door, you walk in, it's impressive. It's architect, like it's evident that it's architecture design. It's beautiful, right? And this speaks to him as a person. He's very outward facing. He's very no frills, but internally, when you look at his business and look at what he does, very, very impressive. So his office is like a extension of him, is probably what I would say. That's just
So, in terms of what you might call the glitz and the glamour, the frills, if you like, he doesn't subscribe to much of that theory in terms of, doesn't have the corporate high-rise office, in the penthouse on the 52nd floor of, Main Street in Brisbane, Albert Street or anything of the sort. He's a little bit more, like the term I thought about before was high and low. Low profile, high performer. So despite the theory out there that you need to have a strong presence and you need to do certain things. Clearly, that's not part of his modus operandi. Maybe just give us a tiny bit of background. How long's he been operating for?
I think he's probably coming up to maybe 8 to 10 years in the industry. But to provide some background, he was a business banker, I believe, with NAB prior to
Yep.
this, and a very high performing business banker. So he sort of come in with a lot of experience in the industry, but we're not going to talk about numbers here. It's not my place to be talking about his numbers, but
Yep.
we've had discussions around his trajectory, and he started from pretty humble beginnings. And if we, without telling you what his numbers are, his numbers will be up there with the best in the country. Unbelievable settlement numbers, very, very impressive. But he's
Do
very
you mean
humble.
for the entire team, or do you mean for him personally?
For him, he runs a very different model. It's 90 to 95% of the volume that runs through that business runs through him. The settlements run through him. And he's got a
Right.
pretty big support team, and we can unpack that through the podcast. But yeah,
Let's do that now, just quickly. So I'm looking at his website here. We've got a few people that have got the title as broker. Are they salaried or contract?
they are salaried, I believe. I think he might have one or two contractors. So his main right-hand man that he's responsible, let's call him a power broker, but I would say extremely, extremely high level is responsible for the majority of Oliver's volume. Would
Yep.
write would write a handful of deals for himself, but the
Yep.
majority of the work that he's doing is essentially um, power broking Oliver's deals.
Okay. So further to which, and again, I'm trying to be devil's advocate here for a second. Do you think there's any reason that he puts all of the deals through his name, either for compliance, for risk, or for vanity, as far as making himself look better in the eyes of the eligibility for awards? Although maybe he doesn't do that because, he clearly doesn't sort of choose to seek the limelight. And if he did seek the limelight, that would probably be consistent with, the whole put it under me just for the purposes of making myself look better.
Yeah, if you want to talk about vanity, I would say that he is the polar opposite of that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
doesn't chase awards. He won like the AFG State Champion Award. Like it's based on a number of metrics. So it's not based on how well you. It's not a submission. You don't put together an amazing submission, and it's based on submission. It's literally based on metrics. So it's probably the award that you want to win, right? And this is pretty telling of Ollie, right? So he doesn't go to these awards. He doesn't nominate for awards. He takes out the state champion broker this year. When we actually drive back to his house, I got picked up from his house. I grabbed my jumper out of the back seat of his car, and there's a little trophy he's got. And I pulled the trophy out, went to give it to him so he could take it inside and show his wife. And he goes, "No, just leave it on the back seat." And I said, "You're not going to take it and show your wife?" And he's like, "Nah, it's all good. Put it back on the seat." I said, "What we do with it?" He goes, "I don't know. It'll probably sit in a drawer in my office somewhere." That's how little like he's just taken out state champion, and he's not even. To be honest, that was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. That trophy's probably still sitting in the footwell of his car.
So why then do you think he puts all of the loans through his name? If it's not vanity, is it to do with risk? Is it to do with compliance? Is there some other reason why you think he chooses to operate his business that way?
I think his business has a huge amount of key man risk, and he's okay with that. Like he's diversified into other areas, like outside the finance industry. So he's well aware of the key man risk in his business. But I think it is because everybody, he's so proficient and so good at what he does. The
Yep,
clients want to speak to him. So he needs to be involved in that. He needs to be involved in that deal. He's the one that's having the strategy call. He's the one that's on the phone to the clients, doing the high value interactions.
yep,
His guys, I believe, are having some level of, they're definitely taking care of all the medium value contact, but they will be still doing some of the high value contact because, from my understanding, I don't know them that well, but they seem pretty proficient at what they do, so they're pretty talented. But I think the reason why all the volume channels through him is because he's the one that they're his clients.
yeah, right. So effectively, they are what you might call internal loan writers, or perhaps another fancy title here is internal lending managers, even though they've got the word broker there, because he would essentially source the opportunity, he would structure the deal, he'd hand it over to them, and they would set it and do everything else in terms of putting it together and running with it.
Yeah, and to put some context around this, to be honest, it might be some of these guys that are writing some volume on brokers. We didn't really get tied down too much in our conversation around the corporate structure of his business
Okay.
because the stuff we were talking about was really high level strategy, and I was probably trying to pull as much secret sauce and as trying to pull as much out of his head as I can so I could go away and evaluate how the skills and abilities that he holds, how I can grow them within myself and become a better broker.
Cool. I'm going to go with another one that I don't mean to rub anyone up the wrong way here, including Ollie, if he chooses to listen to this. Do you know if he brought a bunch of clients across with him when he came through from NAB? Because I know certainly a bunch of business brokers, or sorry, business bankers that do that. And so when they come into broking, they hit the ground running because essentially they go and contact the database, and voila, they've got an instant sort of client base ready to rock and roll
Yeah.
with.
I'm probably gonna. I have no idea to be honest, but knowing what his early numbers were, his numbers for year one weren't impressive.
Right.
He didn't come in and write $50 or $60 million in year one. right?
Yeah, okay.
So that would lead me to believe that he probably didn't, and
Sure.
or if he did, it would have been dribs and drabs. He wasn't coming in and 3 months in settling 10 million a month. That's
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
Well, my experience is that people who do, they are shooting the lights out from day one. And so there's a clear and obvious reason as to why they're shooting the lights out. And so if he wasn't, then he probably didn't.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so that's a couple of my inquisitive questions. Let's keep going back to how you want to continue the conversation around what you discussed with Ollie and how he's running his business.
Yes, perfect. So obviously I've had quite a few interactions with Ollie over the years, and we have a lot of conversations around different things. And me being me, when I find somebody that I believe is elite, I'm always drilling in and trying to dig down and figure out what makes them tick and what that secret sauce is
Yep.
that they have that makes them so good at what they do. And Ollie, he used to drive me nuts at the start because I thought he was just taking the piss. But now knowing him the way I know him, it's the truth. Like I would constantly be drilling him on why are you as good as what you are? And he sits there and he goes, if I can give you one piece of advice, Trav, and he'd always give me the same piece of advice. It was 3 words: write more deals. And I just laugh and I'm like, no, no, mate, no. He's like, write more deals, Trav. There's nothing special about my business. There's nothing sexy. He doesn't have this whale of a referral partner that's referring him $100 million a year. He doesn't have this fancy marketing strategy that's just driving leads into his business. To be honest, he's got no systems and processes. His systems and processes are very, very outdated by his own admission. I haven't had a good look at him because he told me not to worry about it because I'm not going to get any value out of it. What it is he's just very, very good at what he does. He's just an
Yeah,
amazing broker.
I'm not sure that I believe that. I'm going to guess he's doing north of 300 mil per annum, and if he isn't, then he'd have to be pretty close to that in order to win the high performance award
Mm.
for AFG. And you can't run a business on that level of performance and provide what would almost certainly be optimum client experience. So if we distill this down and we go, well, his social media presence is pretty mediocre. His Google presence is reasonably mundane, as in, 32 Google reviews, 4.8, so it means he's got a couple of less than 5-star reviews.
Mm.
Haven't looked at his Facebook profile here, but my guess is it's not much chop. And that's all of which is fine, right? Because they're clearly not avenues in which he is looking to invest energy or focus in order to source opportunities. But then that begs the question, well, if he doesn't have referral partners and he's not running paid ads, he's clearly doing something in order to source clientele, and that has to be an exceptional client experience. And I can't imagine that you can do 300 odd mil or more and do it with poor systems and processes or ho-hum system processes, because the quantity of opportunities and the risk of something falling through the cracks is too great on that level of business, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe I didn't word that correctly. So he wouldn't have the automation and the customization and those sorts of things that I've got and the AI capabilities that I've gone out and built, right? So I wouldn't call it fancy. Probably it would be very similar to his personality, the way his office is set up, that everything that he does, right? It would be simplistic and it would be fit for purpose. It works for him. So I don't think things are falling through the cracks. Well, to my knowledge, I haven't really done a deep dive on his business,
Can't
but
imagine they are. Yeah.
put it this way. It's not something. No one is going to go to him and approach him and say, Ollie, I'll buy your systems and processes. Like this, he
Mm.
doesn't have any IP sitting in there. It's pretty simplistic from my understanding the way it works, but it is fit for purpose.
So, what, in your opinion, then? I mean, the whole write more loans is, it's a fair statement, but there's clearly a strategy and structure and effort that goes into producing that. So, it's whilst it's a reasonable thing to say, it's there's got to be more to it than just doing that. So, what do you think are some of the attributes or qualities that are contributing towards his performance and the growth and the consistency of what they're doing? Because again, it's clearly not socials or some other overt above the line type of marketing that's contributing towards their performance.
Okay. Well, I guess from spending time with Ollie, there's a few strengths that I see in him. Like, and he's extremely talented. His credit knowledge is very, very high. The way that he can structure it, or the advice that he can provide. I think this is probably when we talk about his secret sauce, and he says write more deals. I don't think that's why he's as good as what he is. I think that the advice that he would be providing to his clients would be to a level that that is his unique value proposition.
Hmm.
Alex Hormozy says this all the time: solve rich people's problems because they pay more. And I think Ollie is one of these people, right? So yes, I think the sheer amount of transactions he does a year would be insane, but I know for a fact there are some pretty chunky deals that are that are scattered in throughout the year that would be building those numbers quite high, right? And there's two ways to look at this. You're like, oh yeah, well, he won the champion breaker because he might have had three or four deals that amounted to some insane amount of money, right? But
Are they commercial transactions, by the way?
yeah, yeah, that'll be so obviously he's doing his business just so to provide some context,
Yeah.
equipment finance, residential lending, and commercial lending, like so they cover all three.
Do you have a ballpark estimation? Like, does resi constitute 50%, 70% more than that? Best guess?
We did not go that deep in the conversation. I know that he does quite a significant amount of resi. I know that he
Yep.
does a reasonable amount of commercial. I don't know about the asset finance stuff. I think the asset finance stuff is
So
pretty
resi's
small.
probably his core, but
Yeah.
he likely gets some of his resi clients and does the commercial and business lending for them
Yeah.
as well. Okay.
He has some extremely high wealth clients.
Okay.
Extreme like so just in part like we talk about conversations that some of his clients he'll sit there and talk about their businesses and insane valuations, right? So I'd be assuming that he never spoke about the transactions that were linked to those clients, but I
Yep.
would assume at the level of wealth that these people have, the transactions to be pretty high. So that just go back to my point where it'd be pretty easy for people to turn around and say, well, oh yeah, of course he writes those numbers. He writes three or four deals. It's three times more than what the average break like. I'm just on three deals, right? And that may be true, but I'm going to take a different stance here, right? And I don't want to discredit the people that their average loan size is $300,000 and they're doing 200 transactions a year. They're very good at what they do as well and very proficient.
Yep.
What Ollie's been able to do, I believe, is be able to position himself in the marketplace as he is just this premium service. And what it does is it attracts these high net worth individuals because they they expect more. They expect a higher standard. They don't want I'm not going to, these mass produced cookie cutter brokerage brands where they're only doing the sub 80p or YG stuff. As soon as you get some complexity, I get clients all the time coming to me, hey, I had a conversation with a particular brand. They just did not understand what we're trying to accomplish. They come to us. We understand complex self-employed. So
Yep.
this is where so you can sit there and say, you can look at it two ways. Oh, his numbers are great because he might have a few chunky deals in there. I think he earned those deals. It's through that iteration and the way that he's been able to position himself. He doesn't do these big deals by luck. These big deals come to him purely because he has this reputation in the business world of being an extremely high operator and extremely proficient at what he does.
Yep. And I certainly know other brokers who fit a similar mold, and yeah, as you said, they position themselves well in the mind's eye of their own clients, so that those clients obviously have trust and faith and confidence. And if those clients are somewhat high-ish net worth, and they obviously associate with others who are in a similar caliber of society, socioeconomically, then obviously that's where some of those referrals would
Mm.
come through. So I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. And then back to some of his other strengths. He has an insane work ethic, like works.
Actually, can we just elaborate on that? I think it's not worth just skipping over that, and just using it as a bit of a comment to say, well, that's what he does, and okay, next point,
Yeah.
because it's a strategy. It's not a tactic, and as you said, it didn't happen through dumb luck.
Mm.
And whilst he might write, I'm going to pluck a number out here for the purposes of the conversation. We'll say he's done 10 deals which were worth 15 mil each, right?
Yep.
Again, I'm just plucking numbers out. Uh, but that happened because, as you said, he earned the opportunity to be trusted, and to have the relationships probably with business bankers, and to be able to facilitate the opportunities and project manage them, and do everything that was needed in order to get those transactions across the line. And none of which is insignificant. And no doubt that there's plenty of brokers out there that can do that. But as you said, probably a part of it is having that capability of having invested heavily in his own knowledge, in his education, and choosing to network in a certain caliber of society that's positioned him, as you also said, to be uh, uh, a good choice and a low risk for people that essentially want assurance or confidence that they can get a transaction completed because, as you also said, not every broker is necessarily well equipped to do that yet.
Yeah.
So that's not to be underestimated. And I think that's, whilst it feels or might seem simplistic, it's and it sort of is, but it sort of isn't, and it certainly isn't to be underestimated in the impact and the importance of it.
It definitely. I guess, I don't know, put this analogy on it, right? So if you're going down the shops to buy a new pair of gym shorts, it's a different decision process than it is to go buy, I don't know, like if you're going to go spend $250,000 on a car, you'd expect a different level of service, right? You don't need that level of service. So when you're transacting at that with that level of debt exposure, you want to really trust that person that you're taking the advice from. And I think Oliver's really good at being able to build that trust.
I get it. Yeah, frankly, I know someone that does it, in my opinion, as well as anyone in the country, and I think that Oliver must be of a similar caliber of being able to have high quality financial conversations, money conversations, business development and credit risk and debt management conversations, all of which I'm sure are appealing and confidence building to those consumers or those business owners. And as you said, by virtue and extension of that, he wins the opportunity to be connected into the networks, which again, not to be underestimated. I mean, it's sort of referral marketing 101, but it sort of isn't. There's a bit more depth and substance to what he's doing as opposed to what some other brokers would do, because unlike many other brokers, he's not chasing Google reviews because otherwise he'd have, five or six or 700 of them.
Mm.
And he's clearly not choosing to do a lot of the social media marketing. Hey, he just settled another $15 million
Mm.
transaction, love helping these, high net worth clients and, who's next? Like, again, if you wanted to, build that profile, he would, but he's clearly choosing to pursue other avenues in order to be attractive to his audience and clearly doesn't care about people that aren't his audience.
No, and this is the thing. This is what we keep getting back to, the simplicity of what he does. It's not sexy. It's not front of mind. He just is very clear on what he's good at, and he just leverages the shit out of it. Like, he's so good at what he does, and he knows what he know. He stays in his lane, and he just continues. And it's just so repeatable and so predictable, and he keeps getting this same outcome. And this is why his business is so successful, in my opinion.
Nice. Okay, cool. So I interrupted you. You were
Yeah.
saying, in addition to the client acquisition strategy, what else does he do?
I think he has very, very high standards. Very high standards for himself and very high standards for his team and also the banks he works with. Look, I think he'd be okay with me telling people this. Look, when you speak to him, he could almost come across a little bit arrogant. I know him well enough to know that it's not arrogance. He's just so driven, and so he's just got this no bullshit approach to the way he goes about things. So he would call a spade, and people might take offense, and he's okay with that, right? He's not everything for everybody, but it's very clear to him how good he is. He knows how good he is. I don't think he's got this overinflated ego. I don't think he's up himself. I think if he was to look himself in the mirror, he would say, I am one of the best brokers in Australia, and he's right, he is. So the funny thing, I've spoken to that right hand man of his that we talk about. I actually had a beer with him at a Christmas party. Ollie wasn't there. And I know that Ollie would be cracking the whip on this guy. Like Ollie would not be backward about having tough conversations with him. And the way that he spoke about Ollie, he spoke about him with this real love and affection. And he really enjoyed working with Ollie. And I know that they would have had tough conversations. And I know that Ollie holds him to Ollie speaks about him in a similar way. They're almost the way they talk about each other, they're almost like brothers.
Yep.
But I can guarantee it, there'd be more often than not, they'd be having some pretty tough conversations and some arguments. So yeah, but they've still got he's just, and I think I'd like his team is probably very similar in that respect. His retention's quite high, but he churned through a few in the early days that weren't living up to that standard that he required of them. And I know for a fact that his standard would be far higher than his competitors, and that's
And
one of the.
so, what does that mean, standard? like standard around the touch points on the transaction, standard around how quickly we get back to clients, standard around the quality of advice we give to people, standard around the communication style we provide. What does, in your opinion, the standard mean, or what are some examples of standards that you think he would embrace that hold him in good stead?
I would say all of the above is what you just said there. But actually, one of the things, Ollie and I were in Broker Academy together, and one of the case studies we did, so Broker Academy was that they bring over Harvard Business School professors and we case study some businesses. I can't
Yes.
remember the business we studied, but there's one particular business where we study, and that they were talking about hire 5 staff, get them to do the equivalent work of 10 staff and pay them for 7. So what you're doing is you're saying, when you come in here, you are going to work harder, you're going to be more proficient. We're going to hold you to a higher standard, but you are going to earn more here with us than somebody in the equivalent role in a competitive business. And I think without knowing the remuneration of the way his team are getting paid, you would, if you were to look at them compared to another business, I think you'd be like, wow, he pays them well, but they're earning it too. They're not there going through the motions. They're not just finding their way through the day, doing their 8 hours and getting out of there. When they're in there, they're working hard.
Yeah, it's a high performance work environment, and you are expected to essentially stay until the work's done rather
Yep.
than just clock off because the clock just ticked over at 5 p.m.
Yep. Exactly.
Sure,
No.
fair enough. And obviously that contributes towards them getting things out quicker. And look, I remember another broker who many years ago, just to amplify that point, who, funnily enough, is well, doesn't matter that he's with AFG these days. That's irrelevant because he wasn't in the early days. But he was sitting at someone's living room back in the day when you did that, and that person explicitly said to him, "All right, thanks for this. Look, I think I'll go and just have a chat to my bank tomorrow just to see if they can match the transaction." I think his words were along the lines of, "Well, let me just quickly check. Would your bank come out to you at? And I think this was around 10 p.m. at night. Would your bank come out to you at 10 p.m. at night?" Oh no, they wouldn't. Okay. And do you think that if they were to be out here at 10 p.m. at night, they'd be getting back home and then lodging your application so that by 11:30 p.m. you'll get a text message from me, or at least otherwise first thing in the morning to say your application's lodged and probably approved by tomorrow afternoon? There was something to that effect. And the answer was no. And he's like, right. And then I think the answer from the consumer was, okay, well, yeah, that's a good point. We'll just go with you.
Yeah. We use something similar in our business. So it's not that often these days, but occasionally we'll come across a client that's broker shopping us or shopping us against a lender. And I'm just sitting there saying, this is our position. This is what we're essentially going to offer you. You need to go make a decision. We only work with clients that are committed to working with Virtus long term, not just for this transaction, but we're putting strategies and structures together to generate wealth, and we're talking about years and decades into the future with our clients. If that is not what you're looking for, go directly to the bank or go with that other broker. But if you want to work with us, we need a commitment from you that you were only going to work with us. So that's one of the say that might come across as arrogant. It might be arrogant, but I back my ability. I wouldn't say I'm probably at the ability of Oliver, but I would assume Oliver would be having these similar conversations with his clients. It's not arrogance, it's confidence. It's confidence in the service that we provide, and we do it all the time now. Well, I'll talk to clients. It'll be a vanilla PAYG sub 80 deal. I tell them you can get any bank in the main street of Coolangatta and get this exact same deal. You'll get the same rate, you get the same structure, the same product. What you will not get is the level of service that we will provide to you over the next 10 years. And that's where, so I'm not telling them that I'm going to get them a better deal than they're going to get in the CBA branch down at Coolangatta there. I'm going to get them the same deal. But what they will get is a higher level of service from me over the next 10 years. And so I'm actually telling them, you want to go do it directly with CBA or NAB? Go. Like
They may not actually get the same transaction because, as you were saying earlier, part of the value proposition isn't just the access to a product, it's also the structuring and it's also the advice and the guidance and to some degree the hand holding and the ability to bounce things off you. And I know for sure that some business brokers, as in brokers that specialize in that segment, and to a degree brokers who specialize in the segment around investors will, I mean, also with first home buyers, they certainly want advice and hand holding. But anyway, brokers, I think, position themselves differently just by virtue of what they can do throughout the transaction and in the tenure of the relationship that you wouldn't necessarily get from your local branch.
yeah.
All right, so we've got here expert knowledge that is categoric, and in Ollie's case, is holding him to a position of again winning confidence and trust amongst what you might call some premium clientele. We've got a compelling service proposition that is obviously allowing him to deliver exceptional service, which is clearly important. We've got really high standards that are required of himself and his team in order to be consistent with the premium service that clients are coming to expect. In addition to that, what else are you noticing within the simplicity of his business structure that is enabling him and his team to produce outstanding results?
So one of the things, so I think we spoke about this in a previous podcast, and we talk about with business owners, you look at different business owners and different personality types. He has that personality. So I think the analogy I use, I'm not going to say the word because I would never say there'll be women listening to this, and I've never said this word in front of a woman. But we talk about business owners as having a little bit of that C word in them. Where I know it's just
Charisma. Yes, I'm
yes,
sure he
yeah,
has
yeah, yeah,
nailed it on
yeah,
that.
yeah, charisma. Let's just run with that, right? But it's literally like having tough conversations, being very direct and actually just like, and he's very direct with the lenders, and he's got the ability to bite down on the mouth guard like no one else I know, and just push and drive, and he's got that resilience inside him, right? So that's what I think a personality, it's a personality trait that he's either the kind that comes naturally to him, or he's built it over time.
Yeah,
But he's just like, put it this way, if someone was to call out Ali an arsehole, I'd agree with them. I like him, right? I love him. I reckon he's a legend. And he would agree with them too, to be honest. Like, he's very good at what he does. He's unapologetic if he's got a contrasting opinion. If he's very clear and direct to the point where some people would be offside, but he's okay with that. And I think that allows him, and I think his team sees how hard he works and what he does, and his team are just following him. Like, he's the one that's leading by example in that business. He's the one.
yep,
He's not sitting there clipping the ticket and just watching the commission checks roll in while
yep.
everyone else is running around working their ass off. He is working as
Yeah,
hard,
he's in the
probably
trenches, got
harder.
the arms rolled up, the sleeves
Yep.
rolled up, and calling a spade an effing spade, and being clear and direct and assertive because he knows that if he does that with his clients, that will help lead them. They don't ask around in terms of getting documents back, and they again buy into his confidence and clarity that he can deliver on the transaction and the promise that's being propositioned. His team understand what's expected, and lenders are on board, and to some degree he'll call well, challenge them on their opinion in order to try and fight for the client in order to win the transaction, which is to some degree, I'm sure, a part of what they would expect. I imagine within that, he's also got the emotional intelligence enough to manage relationships long term, insofar as you don't burn a bridge with a lender for the sake of a transaction as much as you do try and manage those opportunities for
Hmm.
the betterment of long term value.
Yeah. And that leads back in to the avatar of the Stones Throw client. Well, his company's called Stones Throw Finance, right? But let's be clear, people aren't going to Stones Throw. People are going to Ollie. They
Yep.
want to deal with Ollie, right? So this is
Yep.
where when he's dealing with his high net worth, anyone that is high net worth that has been super successful, they're very open minded. They're very open to taking on criticism and advice, and they know where to go to get the right advice from people. And
Yep.
this is where I think Ollie's it's right in his wheelhouse. Ollie's not sitting there with all the fancy and fluffing around and such like, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it, this is the benefit you're going to receive. You're telling me that your strategy is to get from here to here. Here is the roadmap for us to achieve it. This is what we're doing. And people go, you know what? I trust you. Let's go.
So, just for the benefit of anyone that's ever done disc profiling, so Ollie would probably be on the basis of what we're describing here, as far as his leadership style is concerned, would probably be referred to a D or a high D, so highly direct, highly driven, and all of the things that Trav's just said, insofar as sometimes that would be off-putting to certain people, but is also part of the attributes and qualities that enable him to produce really good results, because high Ds are generally people that do produce good results, or certainly that's a theme or an attribute that's inherent with that style.
Definitely.
All right, what else? So he's got the charisma and he's driven. What else?
He's really comfortable in the grind. This is something that I personally struggle with, and we've spoken about in previous podcasts about what my career looks like with me getting off the tools. Whilst I really enjoy working with clients and doing deals, I think it's got an expiry date for me, and it might do for him too. And I've spoken to him at times when let's not call it motivations wavering, but at times where he's sort of like he must be really busy and he's just like he's just tired, right? But he seems to be really comfortable in that grind of like, get it, deal done, deal, 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 deal. Just keeps going, keeps going. It's not sexy. Oh, no, no, let's go chase this referral partnerships that'll make my life easier. Or let's go and speak to Trav about building some tech that'll make my life easier. Let's forget about all that. Let's just worry about the deals. And that's what he seems to be comfortable in that space. And yeah, I would, if I don't know this for a fact, but it wouldn't surprise me if he. I don't see him being a broker in 20 years. I don't think you can operate at the level he operates for 20 years. So, and I know he's got other business interests. So at some point he will probably exit the industry and probably earlier than me. That's why I need to be really clear on there's a lot of learnings that come out of my interactions with him, but I do not want to be him. So I'm
Sure.
trying to take different things from him and look at what makes him as elite at what he is, and then apply them to my business because I'm not here to replicate what he's doing. I'm
Yep,
here to
and nor should any of us be, right? We don't want to be the control copy, the control V of anyone else. We want to be the best version of us, not the next version of someone else.
yep.
And so he may potentially, well, he's clearly got a strategy, at least at this point, to manage his energy and hopefully his wellness. Though, as you said, is that might take its toll over the medium to long term. So I guess the proof will be in the pudding with that. But for the time being, he's happy to do the do and get in there and be amongst it. So you said earlier that one of the strategies that he's effective at is also his ability to say no to certain things that may potentially be an elegant distraction or could otherwise take him off course. Is that am I did I read that right or are you saying something else?
He probably says no better than anyone that I know in the industry. He's one of these people, and I'm a really close friend of mine in a consultancy business outside the finance industry says yes to absolutely everything. And I'm like, you need to learn to say no. You've gone through this period in your business when you say yes and yes and yes. And I think we've talked about career seasons of your business. So
Yep.
you might go through the season of yes. Now you need to transition to the season of no. And this is one of the
Yep.
things that I've learned from him. This is one of the things that I've learned. He'll just say no. If it's not going to shift the needle in his business, he just says no. So I find this with different lenders or different opportunities. Travis, can I take you out to lunch? I'm like, no. Like, no, sorry, can I take her to lunch this week? I'm like, no. They're like, oh, is this week busy? How about next week? No, no. Next month? No. When can we catch up? Are you going to be at the event in 6 months' time? Are you going to be at the AFG national event 6 months' time? No, I'm not. Oh, okay. Well, mate, if I need you, I'll call you. Because yes, it's a free lunch, but that lunch is $100 lunch. But me going to that lunch is probably going to cost me $500.
Yeah, of
I'm,
downtime. So it's a
I'm
case
assuming,
of
yeah.
opportunity cost.
I'm assuming Ollie's opportunity cost is probably significantly higher than mine,
Hmm.
considering the numbers that he's running. So he's literally, if it's not shifting the needle for him, he'll say no to events, he'll say no to meetings. If it's not going to bring any value to him, he's very clear on no, and he's not unapologetic about it too. He'll
I
just
have
tell,
no doubt he is unapologetic and may be a word or two in front of the no
yeah.
to help give it a bit more gravitas. All right. In addition to that, what else is part of his modus operandi that holds him and his team? Actually, let's talk about the team thing. From a cultural point of view, it sounds like they're all engaged, they're on board, they understand what's expected of them. He seems to also have what you might call a bit more mature people in his business. Is that just coincidence? Is that by design? I mean, mature in age, not necessarily industry experience, but certainly by age.
I wouldn't actually say when I was in his office, they all looked mid mid to late 30s, give or take. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't say from a finance perspective that's not junior, but it's not mature either. So it's
sure.
probably somewhere in the middle. I
Oh,
think
yeah, I meant that they, yeah, that, well, I really meant that they weren't, university grads.
no. So this is probably one of my key takeaways from this conversation, which is good you brought this up because I probably would have forgotten about this. We were talking about, so in our previous podcast, we talked about how I was trying to cut corners and just go and chase high performers and experienced people and bring into the business. And the reality is a lot of those high performers are either self-employed or doing different things, right? So I
Yep,
was trying to cut a corner because when I'd gone through that PAYG model, I'd got burnt, right? And now he's one of the people that's been a big driver in me changing my thought process. And it's like, Trav, I can teach anybody to write a deal. I can teach anybody credit. What I can't teach them to be is I can't teach them to be hard workers. I can't teach them to be good workers, good people. I can't teach them resilience. These are the things that what he tries to do is he tries to find these people to plug into the business. A lot of the people with, I think his right hand man come followed him from the bank, but with the exception of them, I don't think there's anyone, or there might only be one that's got previous banking experience. He literally takes new to industry and he builds them. And he'll carry that sunk cost because he knows he's going to get the benefit. And this is one of the things that I was learning from him. I was trying to cut that corner. I was like, I don't want that $70,000 sunk cost before I break even, right? He's prepared to go through that pain because he's going to, and what I think he's found is now he's got that team. He's churned through a few of them, but now he's got this really high performing team that he's been able to build, and he's
Yep.
probably got better at recruiting along the way. So he knows what he's looking for, and if this person isn't a fit, he just moves on to the next one. So I think that was probably one of my key takeaways from him is that instead of trying to find the right person, instead of trying to find the right employee, he tries to find the right person and build them into the right employee.
Yep, good call. And I really like that, and not to be underestimated as a strategy to set your team up for success over the long term, rather than trying to fill a void or resolve a problem that is urgent and requires immediate attention. So I like that, and as you said, with you've got some of the fundamentals that you're essentially hiring for culture first, to dumb it down to a simple phrase, and then building the capabilities of that person.
Hmm.
I like it.
Nathan Smith talks about it all the time. He's probably said that to me a number of times, where it's culture over competence. I can teach people the competence. I need the culture. That's where that's the important thing that can't be replicated. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it can be replicated personally, but regardless, I still get the concept, and I agree with it, and it's a pretty good philosophy to have.
Maybe just quickly on that point, maybe I was wrong on the culture thing. Maybe I'm sort of more leading towards the resilience. So it brings to mind a conversation. I was looking to make a job offer to an ex-banker or a banker and bring him across from the bank because I'd seen some interactions he'd had with clients, and I was really impressed. And then when we actually went into the meet, when I actually went out to lunch with him and we're having some discussions around what the job would look like and whatever, and I realized he's just in his bank in the bank and they're pumping up his tires, and I look at he's telling me how he's killing all these his KPIs, how he's shooting the lights out, and then I look at his numbers and I'm like, mate, those numbers they're not that impressive. Like the bar for success in that particular bank was so low, and everyone's pumping up his tires, and I was in the I sort of had to back away a little bit out of the meeting because I realized I don't actually want to offer this guy a job because I can see that he's got no resilience. I'm not going to be able to have that tough conversation with him. When when 3 to 6 months come in and on our side of the fence, you got to eat what you kill over here. Over there, on his side of the fence, it's just clients just walking into the branch. So you're not, it's a different mentality on our side, and yes, the rewards are so much higher. But I realized in that meeting that I wasn't going to be able to have a tough conversation with him. When I would provide him constructive criticism, he would have
Yep.
gone to water. Where I think Ollie has been, and Ollie talking about the history of with his recruitment and his retention, how it wasn't that great in the early days. I think
Yep.
his natural progression was he got better at identifying those things. And in particular, I guaranteed if you speak to him, resilience would be a big one because he knows he's going to push these guys pretty hard. And
Yep.
he needs to know that they've got that resilience to be able to handle that pressure.
Can I say, I think that resilience is sometimes what we find out about people when they're put in a circumstance to see if they've got it or not. Every time we hear of a tragedy that happens in a small community town, I guarantee you that the mayor of the town will get up there and say, "Oh, we're a pretty resilient community up here in such and such." Like it happens every single time. Like I almost say it like to my partner as a bit of a joke. Oh, they're going to be a resilient community.
Mm.
So I think people can be resilient, and whilst it may not be something that's taught per se, I think it's circumstances that will usually predicate or determine someone's resilience, as opposed to having a strategy for how to muster it up. And I think that I'm not sure that you can necessarily pick it up in someone's qualities or attributes just from an interview, but I think people, if they choose to, can embrace that as part of their own growth. But as someone else also said, is resilience is also finite as well, and we can't always lean on that as part of our strategy for long-term success.
You bring up a really good point here, and this is one of the things that I've been working on within myself lately. So obviously, you know how much I love my affirmations and analogies, and like I find them everywhere I can. Right, this is one that I just come up with myself, and this is a bit of that self-talk, and I know that I've had people talk about how tough I am on myself, and this leads into that, but it's that David Goggins style of, and this is something I've come up with myself, is I'm not as good as I think I am, and the work is never done. So it's around what you find is with your business, like I'd grind and grind and grind in the early days, and there was no end in sight, and there was no. But then all of a sudden, it feels like I think we've spoken about it. I'll become an overnight success. The only thing is, it will take me 10 years.
Yep.
All of a sudden, volumes go through the roof. Everything seems to be working well. The wind's at my back. The wind's at my back, and I'm just cruising, and everything's easy, right? What I
Yep.
find is I'll go through that period where we're just writing numbers, and everything's great, and everything seems to flow so easy, and then all of a sudden put the cycling analogy, we've turned the corner and now I'm back into a headwind. And I'm like, oh shit, this is hard. I'm not used to this. I mean, I've had the wind at my back for the last 12 months. It's been great. Now I've got to bite down on the mouth guard again to take that to transition that business to the next level. And those sorts of, and this is where like you're right, you got to be put in that position. And sometimes I think you will get a little bit soft if you not don't have that resilience. It's around that train, like when you're physically training. The harder you train, the stronger you get, but you're putting your
Yep.
body through stress. When I don't put my when I'm not flexing in the business for a period of time, I feel like I'm getting a little bit soft. And sometimes it takes that headwind or the hill climb that I need to get
Yeah,
through.
moments of tension, if you like,
Yeah.
train us and condition us, and so that we don't go from a cruise control all of a sudden to a
Mm.
steep wall that might feel like it's insurmountable.
Yeah, you talk about tension. I think the one that I've been sort of resonating on for the last couple of months, and I keep when I hear this in podcasts and read some books, it's friction. So friction and tension essentially the same thing, right?
I like
So,
tension because I
yep.
said it first, but
Yep. Very good. No, I agree. But we're agreeing on this. That's for sure.
all right. So again, culture and understanding the dynamics of his workplace are important. He's learned to become a better recruiter insofar as a selection of the right people, and also, I guess, set them up for success in the work environment that he has. In addition to that, what else do you think is part of Ollie's secret sauce that's helping him and his team contribute towards high performance?
I think that's probably all I've got at the moment, to be honest. For him, I look forward to having some more conversations with him in the future and sort of trying to unpack some of these things. And like with these conversations, I usually go away and I'll sit on things and I'll usually call the person back and be like, hey, when we spoke about this, am I interpreting this correctly or am I missing the mark and those sorts of things? So this
Yeah,
was only a couple of weeks ago, so I'm looking forward to. It's pretty hard to catch up with Ollie. He doesn't really go to too many events, but
yeah.
he doesn't live that far from me, so we will definitely catch up in a social outing and unpack some more of this stuff. And I'm sure there's going to be more learnings to come. I'm pretty sure that I'm only just scratching the surface of what makes him tick and what makes him so good at what he does.
No doubt. And I have also no doubt that you invited him to be a guest, and in true Ollie fashion, he said no effing way because, this is not part of his modus operandi. Good. I hope I got a laugh from the audience when I said
Mm.
that because I am trying to be a little bit flippant and facetious here. So, a couple of quick comments. I've just looked at one of his peeps. Who looks like he worked alongside Ollie at the branch at the bank back in the day. So probably, and it's not uncommon to see that in organisations, is that one of your key recruits is someone that you've formed a relationship with in years gone by. I'm not saying that's necessary for success, by the way, and I don't want people to think, oh, I don't have that in my business, so therefore I can't be successful. I'm just saying in Ollie's case, it looks like the person that has been in his organisation the longest is also someone that worked alongside him at a lender back in the day. So that's just an observation I've made. Lender relationships, there's no doubt whatsoever that Ollie would keep some of his lenders pretty close to understand a bit more about their appetite for, debt, credit, what they're saying yes to, no to, and so forth, so that essentially he can keep them in his back pocket, which means that when he's having conversations with his clients, he understands, some potential options around what he can do, where he can place it, how he can structure it, and so forth. I suspect there's an element of that he brings to his offering and his client relationships. I wonder if
On
he,
that topic, can we just pause on that topic for 1 second?
yep,
So this is something that I've learned from him, right? And I think he's very, very good at this.
yep,
So with your BDMs at the start, early in your career, you're out meeting with the BDMs, trying to generate these relationships so you can live in these relationships, get the best possible outcomes, right?
sure.
When you're writing $15 million a year, you can't dangle that cherry of a massive amount of volume when they're dealing with brokers that are putting $15 million a month through them, right? So you need to
Mm,
rely on being the nice guy or the nice girl and having that BDM like you, right?
Yep.
We're now at a point where we're very clear with our BDMs. This is what we want. This is what we need. If we're not getting it, we're going somewhere else. Happy to have a beer with you at an event. I think you're a great person, but this is a business relationship. I'm not bringing volume to you because I like you. I'm bringing volume to you because you have the best SLAs, you have the best credit policy. You give me access to head of credit so that we can make quick decisioning. All these are the things. If you as soon as you're out of market, I'm taking my business elsewhere. And I think Ollie's very clear on this, right? So he's not. I'm sure the BDMs aren't being like, oh my God, Ollie's my best mate. Like we catch up every week for lunch. I love him. They're literally like, no, I just got to give Ollie what he wants. Because if I don't, he's going to take his business elsewhere. Like he's really unapologetic about that.
I wonder if it's different though in the business banking because of the brokers I know that do commercial lending, that's not how they treat the relationships at all. They would treat them very differently than that. And I think to some degree, the business bankers would almost be like, if that's the attitude you're going to have, I'm not sure that I want you to be, someone that I want to partner with. So I understand why you might take that approach in a resi side. I'm not sure that's how people would approach it, and I'm not sure that I'd recommend or endorse that as a strategy for essentially collaboration around business lending opportunities.
Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah, like I am talking probably 85% of our volume in Vertus is residential, right? So yes, I do have commercial relationships, but we're not. I've probably got three commercial deals on my desk at the moment, so I'm not. We don't do a huge amount of commercial. So you're right. That relationship does have to be managed differently, and I do manage it differently with my commercial bankers that I'm dealing with. But my BDMs now in the resi space, they know now to even come to me when they're out of the market. Trav, our SLAs have blown out to 8 days. I'll let you know when we're back, and we just shift because they know that if I get caught out, if I put three or four deals in with that particular lender over a couple of days, and the SLAs are blown out and they haven't told me, then I'm
Yeah,
frustrated and I can't trust them anymore.
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, yeah.
I told you this is what I need from you. When you're out of the market, when you're out of the market, I'm ready, you're out of the market, I say, let me know, and I'm gone, but I will come back. When you're back in the market, I'll come back. And so this is where it is. Like I really like my BDMs, that they're amazing, but they understand that this is transactional what we're doing here. Like it's all based around the transaction, right? And I think, like as I said, I haven't really seen Ollie's interactions with his business bankers or with his BDMs and stuff, but that's probably me making more of an assumption about him as a person and
Sure.
and what I've seen of him.
No problems. So let's just go through this. I'm going to summarize this for the benefit of our players, which AKA is our audience. For anyone that's forgotten, we're trying to, condition you to be the players here. So, expert knowledge and capabilities of providing advice in addition to structuring deals. We've got a compelling and premium service proposition. He has arguably higher expectations and standards of himself and his team, and also his business partners, aka the lenders or the bankers, that are going to support him in delivering the service and the outcome for the clients. He is, I'm going to get to the last one. I've got one in here. I'll get to it in a sec. Charisma and driven. So, really concise, direct, straight to the point. There's no ambiguity around what he's saying. And that would obviously influence behavior and the way things are done internally. His systems and processes aren't necessarily, like as he said, it's not like he's going to build his brand and reputation around that as part of his service proposition, but clearly good enough in order to deliver the standards that are required. He's really, really effective at saying no to the things that aren't necessarily aligned to his medium or long term vision and business growth objectives. He essentially attracts and has chosen to refine his recruitment process to be sourcing people that are consistent with the values and behaviors that he wants, aka the culture, and what you might call hard workers that are prepared to put in the effort, and he expects them to work hard, and he's prepared to pay them more in order to do that, to be consistent with the service. No doubt he would have some strong lender relationships, as we were touching on earlier. And the one that I think is not to be underestimated is he's well networked in a segment of the marketplace that allows him to do his best work with essentially what you might call high caliber clientele. And that's by design and it's by choice, and not to be underestimated in the effectiveness of that part of what he does, which is probably a little bit more to it than picking up the yellow pages and just cold calling businesses. Albeit, I suspect it's probably also part of his strategy is to be in and amongst the business community rather than again at the Pearl office or the Ivory office in
Mm.
downtown. So
Yep.
I think that's maybe a bit of a summary, Trav, for our audience, just so they can
Mm.
take that away and think about which parts of that can they apply or be consistent with. The other one actually was he's comfortable with the grind, at least he is for now, in terms of what's good for him and how he chooses to operate himself day to day.
That's one thing that I just want to touch on real quickly that we missed that's probably pretty important. One of the conversations we had with him was around EBIT, so around the profitability in the business, right? So he would runs a small team. I think his team's like 8 or 10. It's not a big team, right?
Yep.
I would I would be surprised if there's a more profitable. I've not seen a more profitable business. Again, I haven't seen his numbers, but so I'm making an assumption here. I do not know a business that, in my opinion, would be more profitable than his. So we look at these businesses that have got 50, 100, 300 staff, and you've got these really charismatic, big CEOs, and they're always at the events and doing things. These are people that I associate with, and I think they're amazing people. But if you
Yep.
were to look at their tax return, with I would I'm making the assumption that I would say that Ollie's tax return would be significantly more impressive than theirs.
So, what if we took out Ollie's trail and we looked at the upfronts only? So, how do you think it would fare? I mean, it will clearly still be significant because he probably produces in excess of a couple of $1 million of revenue based on my estimation of him doing 300 mil
Yep.
of settlements. So, and his headcount, 8 people, well, let's call it 100 grand each, maybe a bit more than that, 120K. So we'll call that 900K of operating expenses just there. Chuck in an extra 100K because we can. We'll call it $1 million of expense, which means that he's still got $1 million profit. So
Mm.
50% margin.
Huge, huge, right? So and this is where he's very clear on, like, he doesn't. Would this impact his enterprise value of his business? I think it will. That business, there's a huge amount of key man risk in his business, and he's okay with that. He's diversified outside the industry completely, so he's well aware of that. He's covered off on that, and he knows it's something that he's just comfortable with. He's become comfortable with there is key man risk in his business, and he's not actively trying to work that key man risk out of his business.
Yep.
So it'll be I think it will reflect in his exit,
Yep.
but look, this Stones Throw has been this vehicle that is just driving a huge amount of profitability that's allowing him to diversify his wealth creation and put
Yep.
himself in a position. And in all honesty, he's probably in a position where he could sell Stones Throw tomorrow and probably never work again now. And he's 40 years old. Like, that's pretty impressive. Well, I don't, I'm guessing he's 40. He's probably late 30s, early 40s.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ollie, if you're 35. Um,
Fair to say he's a stone's throw away from retirement,
yeah.
pun intended, of course. All right, gang. So on that note, thanks very much for taking the time to listen to this episode. If you found this interesting, by all means, feel free to comment or subscribe. We appreciate the opportunity to interact with you, get to know you better, and make sure that we're serving up content that is of interest to you. And as importantly as ever, is make sure you can apply some of these principles to support yourself in terms of your goals and objectives. On that note, we'll catch you in the next episode. Thanks very much, and bye for now.